Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. It is a special meeting today, Legislative Rules and Governmental Operations Committee. It is June 7th, 2022, and the time is 2:02 p.m. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of our prior committee meeting, May 24th, 2022. Is there a motion to move that forward for discussion? Moved by Supervisor Conover. Seconded by Supervisor Thomas. Discussion. All right, hearing no discussion, I will move for a vote. All those in favor of the minutes of the May 24th, 2022 meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Minutes are approved as submitted. All right, before you is a local law that you could, but you don't have to adopt. It's come to a time, and I think June 8th, tomorrow, is the day that you would have to adopt a law. But you can adopt the law anytime after June 8th. The reason why I mentioned June 8th is that starting tomorrow, if you haven't adopted a law, it goes back to the days of pre-COVID. In other words, you have to attend the meeting to be counted. Okay, for your vote to be counted, for a vote quorum to be counted. So it's business as usual if you don't do anything at all. However, if you wish to offer the option of allowing a public elected official, a board member of the Board of Supervisors, to attend a Board of Supervisors meeting or a committee or special committee, etc. meeting, there are certain criteria that have to be met if you're going to allow video conferencing. First of all, it has to be established that those who are physically present establishes a quorum. Second, that elected official who wishes to attend via video conferencing can do so only if there are special circumstances. Now, those special circumstances can mean disability, illness, caregiver responsibility, and there are others. But they would be like that. In other words, the bill that passed as part of the budget, define it as extraordinary circumstances. Okay, so if you wish to allow video conferencing, you will have to adopt a law. And only after that law is established with the Department of State is it effective. And video conferencing would be allowed, but here's the question. Who decides the validity of the extraordinary circumstance? Now, the county of Ontario, for example, it is the chair of the Board of Supervisors that will decide on the validity of the extraordinary circumstance for the requestee, and the request has to be made 24 hours before the meeting unless there are other extenuating circumstances. County of Ontario will have to deal with that. And if it's a committee meeting, it would be the committee chair that would decide the extraordinary circumstance. In other words, it appears to me, but then I'll take input from you, that if you choose the allowance of elected officials to opt for the video conferencing, and you decide and define the extraordinary circumstances, and you're okay with whomever you select as being the approver of those extraordinary circumstances, we can go in that direction. But you can see there's probably a lot of politics, there's a lot of mud, there's a lot involved. They don't make it easy, they don't make it clear. All right. That's the introduction. So let's move on to discussion. Supervisor Cano.
Thank you. One approach is to make a request. The other approach is to inform that you're video conferencing. And that's really the distinguishing difference. Are you actually making a request of someone to video conference, or are you as an elected official simply informing that you have extraordinary circumstances and you wish to video conference? And I think I think item 5 pivots on it. It's 5 of the pivots on the notification, or is it an actual request? And the other comment I would make is that what you said was that the quorum still has to be achieved by those present. And that's important because the technology can break down and you might lose the person on the screen for any whole host of reasons. Entirely, you might lose the sound. So, but they are entitled to vote.
Well, they are entitled to vote, and there's some lack of clarity to the law. I have read where some are using components of the old law, in that you could allow video conferencing and that person could be counted as part of your quorum if the place that they are video conferencing from is been announced, its location, and is publicly accessible. However, I don't agree with some that have taken that position. I think it's, and I might be wrong, and we have the county attorney and we have the county administrator here to ring in at any time they want. It just starts getting very messy and unclear. And I've read the law multiple times, 103A. And so it gets muddy. I don't know if you want to add any thoughts to the one component that I saw with one county's piece of legislation was to allow the person to be part of the quorum, but if their announced place of video conferencing is open to the public. The way I read the law over and over again, it says that you have to be physically present to be counted in the quorum, and that's where I'm going. But by the end of the day, if you don't do anything, the old rules pre-COVID apply, and that's the way life was and will be. But other thoughts?
Yeah, I personally would like to go back to pre-COVID type rules. I would like to have us truly act as if we are a committee form of government where people show up for meetings, they put their hand up and they vote. So that would be my preference. that we truly get back to a pre-COVID type environment and truly establish what a committee form of government is. And that means being here and voting and being here in person.
Anybody else on the committee want to share their thoughts? All right, members of the public. Yes, Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you, Supervisor Stroh, for the opportunity to speak in this committee. To Supervisor McDevitt's point, I too think that we're more productive when we're all in the room together. I just would caution us from moving too quickly to that. I'm kind of living an example where I've recently had COVID, still testing positive. I'm certainly productive. I feel fine now, but I don't think any of you want to be around me. So until and unless we're completely done with diseases like this, I don't think we should limit ourselves so much. That's all.
Anyone summarize what she said for me? I couldn't hear her. My ears aren't the best, but
She stated, she warned us against rushing to judgment, stated that in a hypothetical scenario, which has not been so hypothetical for some board members, if you've had COVID, for instance, would be a very good reason to be able to participate remotely.
anybody else? Yes. Chairman Garrity.
I believe that when I was elected to this office, I knew what I had to do and to come in person. And I'm not a technology person, but I've seen too many things go on where people thought they were part of the meeting. We had that recently where one of our supervisors thought they were being part of the meeting and we couldn't hear them. And I believe we should go back to the way we started, go back to do nothing at all, show up for our meetings, show up for our committee meetings. And I think that's the best way to treat it going forward. I'm a firm believer of being here in person. That's what I was elected to do. So.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Wild.
Thank you. Just one of the thoughts that I have along these lines is we have changed this year from last year, the number of board meetings we have. We have 2 meetings a month. When I was scheduling my camping and vacation trips this year, it was always around last year's schedule because that was a priority. This year, it's a totally different story. And when you make reservations 9 months in advance, those are kind of hard to change. So I'm looking for just a little flexibility, but I also agree that it's important to have everyone here that we can.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Chairman. And I certainly appreciate hearing from my colleagues. The point that we were elected to serve and we have a responsibility to the public to do our very best at all times. That's what we swore to do. And that includes being here and casting our votes and deliberating on matters. But Supervisor Hogan did make an excellent point, or a point that's close to my heart. We continue to get COVID reports, whether or not we're required to wear masks. There's a department here on the campus that is required to wear masks because they're a health care facility. That's our health services department. And people are still in the hospital. The governor, politicians, business leaders can all say that it's passed. I would like to get back where we value the trust in people, that they're not looking to skip school and zoom into a meeting. But I don't think that the timing is now. If we could vote to maybe begin this January 1st. If that's a possible option, that's something I would be interested in. Or when we publish our last daily COVID report. We're still invested in that situation. Any one of us could catch COVID and not be able to chair a committee meeting or cast an important vote. And then where do we stand with our constituents? Are we being unfair to them? The residents of Stony Creek being represented if, God forbid, Supervisor Thomas is ill. So I would like to, if it's at all possible, to entertain an idea of delaying the decision until we're out of these woods. So.
Supervisor Conover?
Yeah, I just want to get back to my thoughts on item 5. My feeling on item 5 is that I think that as elected officials, I think that we should just simply, if we're going to do this, and I'm not saying we should do it today, I think just brings up an excellent point of just a little while longer and see how things unfold. And I think that's, I think probably sage advice is sage advice, but as far as I think that the supervisor has to take responsibility, if we're going to do something like this, each supervisor, each elected official has to take responsibility for notifying us that they will not be in attendance 24 hours in advance. And I don't think anyone should be put in a position where they have to approve that. Simply because if there should be an issue, why did you approve it? Say, well, they asked for it. Well, they requested it, but then you approved it. On what basis did you approve it? And why did you deny it? Or why did you allow it? So every time it's allowed, if you're the approving entity, you've approved that. And so my feeling is no, I would just soon leave it in the hands of the elected official and then let the voters decide whether they're being well represented or not by that elected individual, as opposed to putting either the chairman or the chairman of a committee in a position where they have to approve the request that's made by another elected official. So that part of this, I think that was an issue that was raised by one of the supervisors that I would agree with. If we're going to do this at some point in time, I think item 5 should be simply that you have to make the request, you have to make it within a certain period of time. You need to state the reasons for your request, and that's the end of it. And I don't think we should have to put anybody in a position where they have to investigate whether it's a real or serious request and whether there's, you're going to want a note from the teacher. I mean, what exactly do you want here? Yeah, a note from the doctor, a note from the child that the home giver has to stay home with because they're sick. I mean, I just think that's not where we should go.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On this local law and all local laws that we adopt, there's to be a cost benefit analysis on things. We have not discussed what the cost to the county would be with this local law. The clerk of the board and her staff are going to be involved in all of the items noted here, as well as the county administrator. I'd like to hear if this is going to produce any more burden as it is written to the clerk or the administrator.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Supervisor Stroud, it's Mike Jurassic.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with Supervisor Conover, reference to the chair being in a position to excuse or not excuse somebody. I think there's situations that we can't even foresee right now that would make that very difficult at times and certainly political at other times. So I think to avoid that, as Supervisor Conover suggested, is certainly beneficial. The other thing about being able to be remotely in attendance is certainly beneficial if you're not a member of the committee. I'm not a member of this committee, but very interested in what takes place. I wonder if anything could be carved out that you would at least be considered in attendance if you're not a member of the committee. I'm not sure if you can do that or not, but we've got 13 regular committees and several other special committees. To be able to go back and forth that many times a month does become difficult. Certainly, if you're on a committee, chair a committee, I don't think there's any excuse for that. But just some consideration being able to attend these, all of the other committee meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Karachi, whatever you said.
I picked up a question near the end as to whether, if you're not a member of a committee, whether you may be able to still listen in, participate as a member of the public remotely. I think the answer would be yes. I think what this law speaks to is your ability as a member of the body to participate officially in the actions of the body. So if you want to vote, if you want to engage in the debate as a member of the committee, then that's what this concerns. I don't think that we'd have a prohibition on, for instance, you, Supervisor Gerasi, continuing to attend on Zoom remotely meetings that you're not a member of.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Supervisor Thomas?
Is it possible to introduce this law and sunset it at the end of September of 2020?
You can introduce it anytime you want. Or never introduce it.
Right.
So, but starting tomorrow, or is it the day after tomorrow? June. All right, so starting on June 9th, the day after tomorrow, it's businesses pre-COVID. And you can adopt this law anytime you want, and once it's established with the Department of State, it becomes effective. So you can do it now, you can do it September, you can do it in January.
Well, I was thinking
but-
of extending it for, another quarter till the end of September.
Yeah, if we don't act at all, the old rules apply.
Right. Then at the end of September, that's what would happen.
And then in July of 2024, the legislature is going to reconsider this whole situation. And they could actually before that. You never know with them. All right, so what I'm hearing is a consensus to not act at this time for various reasons, many of which you've shared with us. But further consideration, or you wish it to return to the days before COVID, which it will by not acting on this. I'm sure it will be brought up at the Board of Supervisors meeting for further discussion. But if there's no desire to take an action, do we have to have a resolution saying we're taking no action or? No, okay. Yes.
So that I'm
Supervisor.
clear and maybe the listening in public is clear. Wednesday night at 6 o'clock, a week from tomorrow, we have our monthly Board of Supervisors meeting. Do you have to be present?
Yep.
Okay, you have to be present. No extenuating circumstances.
You have to be present if your vote is going to
Oh,
be counted,
okay,
and you're
okay.
going to be counted as being
Okay,
present.
I just want to make sure
That
that,
doesn't prohibit you from listening and
Right.
then remotely or so forth.
but if you want your vote to count, you have to be here.
Yes,
Okay, good.
okay. Yeah. Oh, Supervisor Hogan?
Thank you. How do we get this on the agenda for full board discussion? I understand that the committee doesn't want to take action, but I feel like this is important enough that it should be discussed by the entire board.
Well, knowing how we've operated in the past, somebody will bring it up and we'll start discussing it.
Can we get out ahead of that and actually have it on the agenda?
Well, can we add it to the agenda as a discussion item? It can be brought up under anybody's reporting and we could discuss it like we do other issues. But there is no particular agenda item from what I was just told to put this on as a discussion item. Okay, Supervisor Conover?
Yeah, just to the point of the full board, I mean, the full board has to deliberate vote on everything. So this as well, should it be introduced at the board, so that discussion would take place as a matter of course. If somebody wanted to bring this forward on their own, they can get sufficient votes, they're able to do that as well. But just to make myself clear, I see the advantage of the technology. And I see the advantage of what it offers the democratic process. We're a very mobile society. The technology, largely as a result of COVID, has really come of age. I think that it allows for greater participation. But how it's done and when it's done, I'm also open to thoughts on that. Like for Mr. Driscoll is one example, Peter on so I'm not opposed to the application of the technology. We've got to get the rules to the road down to make sure we're all very clear on what the rules are going forward. And but once again, I think that it would be up to each supervisor to correctly notify in a timely fashion of their decision to participate remotely.
Well,
but I do support the use of technology.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that means, but thank you. Supervisor Leggett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to clarify, without taking any action, we still will have Zoom capabilities at our meetings. So for example, I'm not a member of this committee, but I could still have a Zoom invitation and Zoom in on it. And the same thing with the full board. If for some reason I didn't feel like coming down and being here at all, I could still Zoom in, not participate, but still Zoom in. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And then also about bringing this up before the full board, this was a fully advertised committee meeting. We know what the actions were being requested for this meeting, and every supervisor has the opportunity. I drove down here personally to be here at this. You know, it's a 50-mile round trip. And it's so I take it that if you are interested in this topic, you show up at the committee meeting, because we have the committee structure, and the chairman of a committee is always open to non-committee members speaking up and saying what's included. So I'd say the matter to bring this before the board, because a lot of the board was not here, that is their choice not to be here. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Driscoll?
No, I'm.
Okay. Anybody else? All right.
I have one other thing to bring up. It's not on the agenda. Can I speak now or?
Sure. Sure. Chairman Garrity?
I voted for the second meeting in January to put us to our second meeting. And I think we're failing miserably at our second meetings, even though I think the second meetings serve a purpose. The way they're going now, people leave those meetings. We don't get quorums. We don't get votes. And I would respectfully ask this Legislative Rules Committee to make all our resolutions we pass, unless we're required by state law, to make them simple majorities rather than 2/3 vote, because people come in the meetings, people walk out of the meetings, then people come in back into the meetings, or at least from where I sit, sometimes I see that done. And you know, in order for us to consider this continuing with the second meeting, I think we as a board need to be in attendance. Now, we set the hour for each of the meetings, hoping that we can start at 10 and get there by noon, and we're not very successful. But what's even more disturbing is my colleagues leave. They don't attend the second meeting, and we did it because there seemed to be an overwhelming that we wanted the second meeting. Now, I know that it has helped staff with certain short-term things that we need to get on the second meeting, but I just say to the board, if we're gonna have these meetings and people don't want to be there, let's make it a simple majority so that when people leave, you don't get all these absences counting as a no vote or what, however it works. And I just plead with this committee to look at your rules and see if we can make everything a simple majority. I'd like you to consider that in the future. It doesn't have to be considered today. I'm not sure. I'm not a technical person on the rules, but if we're going to keep these up, then we can't have 5 or 6 people deciding not to attend our second meetings, because that's not what we agreed to, or at least I agreed to come. Thank you.
All right, but correct me. I think there's 2 things that you were asking. One is the lack of a need for the second meeting. And the other one is that all pieces of legislature that comes before the board only require, either way, come from
Majority.
committee or from the floor, only require a majority vote.
That's correct.
Okay,
And now I'm not saying there's not a need, but certainly a lot of my colleagues don't think that there's a need for the second meeting because they leave.
okay, so we can put it down as a discussion item along with Juneteenth and creation. I think we need to have more conversation and get busy on the creation of a records officer. Supervisor McDevitt.
Yeah, I would just like to echo what Supervisor Garrity said, but when the issue of voting for a second monthly meeting, I voted against that then. I would vote against it now. I don't think it's a good idea. I think exactly what you've identified is occurring. People are walking in, they're walking out, and it just really gives the impression that we're just disorganized and a little bit hapless. Supervisor Leggett talked about a cost-benefit relationship. Okay, now I would kind of suggest, or maybe argue a little, that the amount of effort required of our administrator and Amanda and our staff, it just becomes harder to do, harder to get it. It's hard enough to get it right once a month, okay, because of all of the issues that are involved, the things that have come in late, that it just is. I just don't think it's a good idea, and I personally think we ought to do away with it.
For clarification, that was the majority of those present.
Yeah, all right, got it. Anybody else wish to speak to anything that would apply to government ops, rules, legislation? Anybody from the public? Don?
Hi, Chairman Stroud. No, nothing on YouTube as of now.
All right, thanks. Supervisor Conover? Motion to adjourn, second. Supervisor McDevitt, seconds. All those in favor, any discussion?
Aye.
All right, all those in favor, aye. Any nays? We're now